What's happening, people? It's your boy, J-Train83, the Rail Enthusi-Artist. Back at it with a Railfanning story of mine, based on this piece I called 7 N and B Action at Queensboro Plaza Part 2. It's a sequel to a past piece I did called 7 and N Action at Queensboro Plaza. Both pieces are depicted as 1988 scenery in Long Island City, Queens. As you can see in this piece, this is where you got the 7 train as a red bird on a flush and bound track on neck and neck with an Astoria bound N train, which is R32s. While in my part 2 piece, I added 3 trains in one scenery, as you can see through each one that's shown. Exactly, from how I remembered it. So this was back in 1988, and I was 5 years old at the time. And my mom and I remember it was one weekend, we went to my relative's house. They had lived in Astoria, Queens at the time. So my mom and we traveled on the subway, of course. And at the time, we had to take the J train to the F train. We transferred at Delancey and Essex Street. And at the time when Queens Boulevard line was the E, the F, the G, and the R. And the F train used to run, of course, over the 53rd Street tunnel. So we took it to Queens Plaza. So after the long, wonderful subway ride from Gates Avenue to Queens Plaza, we arrived hardly, I should say halfway to our destination. So we get off at Queens Plaza, and I think we was waiting for the cab or a bus to get to our relative's house at the time. So we come up the stairs from the train station, and first thing I notice is there's this elevated train line with all of these girders and steel structure and track beds everywhere. And I'm just like, whoa, this is amazing. But I'm not knowing what train line this really was. So again, I was only 5 at the time, so every line I thought was the J, but it wasn't really the J. So I was kind of like at bliss, but still ignorant to not all, knowing that not every line is the J line. So as I'm waiting for the cab with my mom, and I'm looking at this elevated structure with all these track beds going everywhere, I'm just like in total amazement, like what line this is and what train is like just running through here and what have you. So the first thing that I start to notice is the sound of the train that's roaring on yellow structure. So I'm looking east and west trying to figure out which way is this train coming and what train is coming through on the elevated line. And lo and behold, the first train that I see is a Redbird with the sign that says 7 Main Street Flushing. So I see this and my jaw dropped. Keep in mind now, I was only 5 at the time, so I'm introduced to a lot of things as far as how New York City Transit was functioning, as far as with their trains and what lines was coming through where and all that other good stuff. So the 7 line was the first IRT subway line I was actually introduced to, being that the 7 train at the time was using the R33, R36 World's Fair Car class, which was a totally different looking Redbird than the R30s that I normally saw as a kid on the J, the L, and on the M line. It appeared pretty different. The cars pretty much were, 51 feet in length, so they appeared a little bit smaller than the R30s, which I normally rode as a kid, which they were 60-foot cars, versus the World's Fair R33, 36, which were 51-foot subway cars, So the difference pretty much between, the IRT Redbirds and your BMT and IND Redbirds. So after that Main Street Flushing bound train passed through on the elevated track, I was hoping to stay there just a little while longer, but boy, I was definitely in luck because I did see more trains pass through the area. So now the next train that was passing through was another 7 train, but it was going Manhattan bound, so it was using the other track, but it was flying down the incline. going into Queensboro Plaza station. I was just totally amazed by that. The next thing you know, I see another train that's passing through, but this time it's on the Astoria line. So now on the Astoria bound track, here comes an R68 on the N train, but this is at the time R68s was relatively new cars. So I'm watching all of the action go down while I'm waiting for the cab to go to my relative's house with my mom. And I'm just still in amazement. I'm watching this R68 on the N train high above me, rounding the curve. And I'm just like, wow, you know, this is some good stuff going on. It was crazy. Like, I couldn't believe what I was seeing at the time. I mean, just happening all on that tall, complex, elevated structure. You got 4 tracks just going every which direction. You got the abandoned girders underneath, and just seeing all this equipment running, you know, almost everywhere. And I was just like, this is just some unbelievable stuff. I couldn't even believe it myself. I was only like 5, and I was just taken aback by just everything that I was seeing. So there was some more roaring going on. So the next train that arrives is now another Main Street Flushing bound 7 on the Flushing bound track. Okay, so that train is passing through. It's another Redbird. It looks damn, you know, awesome. So another train is now passing through parallel to the 7, but this time it's also on the Astoria line, but it's on the Manhattan bound track. So this train that appears roaring the loudest was an R30 in graffiti. Now at that time I thought it was a J train. Again, I was still, you know, blissfully ignorant, thinking every line I saw that had an R27 or R30 in graffiti was a J train. But I learned real quick that was not a J train, because this train was 10 cars. It was a B train, of course, so it was on its way to Coney Island. So after all of the excitement of seeing all of the equipment that I was able to see passing through on the elevated tracks, I pretty much almost did not want to leave that location, but the cab had to arrive, of course, to pick up my mom and myself so we could go to my relative's house. So yeah, that was definitely a story worth remembering. But then again, this was worth remembering that I had to put this down in an illustration. Even though I was only 5, but yeah, this was something that I still hold on to as a very wonderful memory. I got plenty more to tell when I plan on, you know, doing more my personal Railfanning stories. So I want to say, you know, thanks for watching. Thanks for listening to another one of my personal Railfanning stories. As I said before, I have plenty more that I want to tell. Of course, next week I will be working on a new drawing, so to get back in the swing of things. I just wanted to take a break from illustrating. Don't want to like burn myself out, so I figured I'd do, you know, this video, you know, especially for those who, you know, come by and watch. So once again, you know, thanks for watching. You know, just hit the subscribe button, like, comment, share. You know how that whole thing goes. And see you guys in the next one.